Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why at each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we're back and I'm excited. I've got another returning guest. It's like old home week lately and I love it. We've got Meredith coming back to share with us and she's going to take us on a quest. But before we get into that, let me switch over and say, Meredith, welcome. Why don't you tell people who you are, where you're at, what you do?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me back. This is really so much fun. And Steve, you do such a great job of just inviting people into comfortable conversations. So it really is a joy. And I'm excited to be here and talk with you. Generally, it's nice to talk with people professionally about things that, you like and you want to share. So this is just a great platform. And, so I've been a school librarian for 20 years. There's been quite a journey throughout those years. And right now I'm in a middle school and I absolutely love it. Middle schools, it takes a certain type of person to want to be in a middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I started, when I did my teacher experience, I was in a middle school and then it really took me up until now, the whole 20 years to come back into a middle school. And I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I started in, I think I did my field placement in a middle school. No, I did my field visitation. It wasn't even like my teaching experience in a middle school. Then I was in high school, taught in high school for a couple of years, and I only got into middle school on accident. That was in 1999 and I've never left. I mean, I don't know if it's just that I never got past middle school in my own brain so I can understand the kids, but it is definitely a world unto its own, but I really enjoy it. It's a really different experience.
It is. You know what I like about it is that there's so much change in children in their development from 6th to 8th grade. Like it is a world of difference. They're still fresh and sort of like elementary. And then they get to 8th grade and they're, like, all right, I'm going on to high school and they're turning into those young adults. And it's all happening at this discordant time and frame and, but it's just so fun. It's stressful, but fun.
Yes, absolutely. I'm totally there with you. And I've got to say, listeners, if you haven't already heard Meredith's previous episode, she was in episode 52. She was talking about information organization. And I don't know if Meredith knows this, but I'm going to tell her and everybody that episode is the most downloaded episode of the podcast by far of all time. So you absolutely want to check it out, folks. It is good stuff. It was, just having that conversation so blew my brain open and made me think about things in some real awesome ways. So definitely worth a listen, folks, if you haven't gotten there yet.
Well, now I've got to live up to that. You just set the bar higher than I think I can meet, but maybe, I don't know if I want to explode your brain again today, but maybe.
Yes, absolutely. So I love that we've kind of been chatting back and forth a little bit and you had sent this idea that you've been working on. And I love it because I'm a huge lover of an acronym and something that we can kind of plant in students' heads that's going to help them think through processes.
Yes.
And I can't say that I'm good at it, but I love to attempt it. And I feel like you have really got a really interesting one for us here to think through. So I'm super excited that you wanted to come and share this. So I'm going to take a step back and say, where did this sort of idea for this come from in the first place?
Okay. Wow. So I have two people that I want to shout out for being pivotal in me feeling like I could do this.
Okay.
And the first is my school librarian, my mentor, the librarian who lent me her copy of Seeking Meaning from Dr. Kufeal. And she just had this spirit of excellence, this discernment in everything she did. And when I was going through my program, I didn't do my formal teaching experience with her, but I did step in and shadow her in an elementary school. And she was doing research skills with third graders like it was nothing. And the level of thought put into everything to make it so simple is you don't always realize, but she just made it right at what they needed. But she was making sure that they were being delivered these foundational information literacy skills. And, so from then on, I knew that, you can do research with young kids. You're not talking about some high level process that's unreachable until you hit a certain level of brain development. You can do this at these levels.
And that's interesting because I think a lot of times we do sort of have this expectation or this belief that until the students are advanced to a certain level, they're not going to be able to take in or understand, or maybe we're not thinking of them as using these skills, although we absolutely should be thinking about it. Like now that you're saying it, of course it makes sense that we should be building this in foundationally as something, especially in our modern information systems. It's something students absolutely need from the very get-go. So I love that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so having something that could meet everybody, no matter what age, what grade level, what experience, was important to me. And I remember, and we're talking like 10 years ago, maybe, I was kind of wrestling with the information search process. I love the information search process. It marries that information literacy along with the psychological aspects of what happens neurologically and the barriers to us exploring things that we're not familiar with. So I remember I was talking to my aunt, my godmother, about the science of information literacy and this whole process. And I was kind of wrestling with it in my own head and just, it's kind of been done. What else is there? And she just looked at me and she said, well, make it your own. And I thought, I can do that. I can make it my own. It's okay. And it gave me a sense of empowerment, that, okay, I don't have to just take this thing or feel like I can't touch it. I can take it and make it my own.
So important in education because there's so many amazing ideas and theories and practices out there, but it can be hard to remember sometimes, like you're saying, like this seems like a sacrosanct thing that we cannot alter in any way, but we really need to think about how does it apply to our specific location, our specific students, and even from year to year that can change. So I love that you felt that sense of like, oh yes, I can and I should figure out a way to bring this to my location.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it was literally like a year later and I'm in the shower and, and all of a sudden,
all the best ideas,
like, like you can see the pieces coming together in your own brain, and Quest just popped in and it was like, oh my God, this is it. And my husband, the way he tells it, he heard me shout, Quest, in the shower. And then before you know it, I'm like dripping water and my hair is wet and I'm like grabbing paper and like, give me a pencil. And I'm like scrambling it down before it exits my brain forever.
I love that you had this literal eureka moment of like reenacting the whole eureka running through the streets. That's amazing.
Oh, it did. It really was. It really was. But I mean, even then, Steve, this was like 9 years ago, and I had it and I was working with it and I was developing it. But, it just, certain things take time to germinate and you're looking for the right way and the right environment and the right circumstances. And, it's hard to get all those pieces to align. So I knew something just like, think I've got it, but I'm not sure. And, I think I can do this. And then a couple of years ago, I crossed paths with another librarian. And I'd been talking to people about this for years. Like, hey, I've got this thing. I think I can do something with it. And I brought it to her and, I said, what do you think? And she said, and
sometimes that's even worse than just a no, like,
no. But she said, I think take this out, add this in, and this. And I said, oh my God, yes. And so immediately she was this partner, this collaborator, this contributor, who was able to take things to a little bit more of a practical level of how do you really take this just from this theoretical framework into something that can be implemented and shared and used and all of that. And that's Jeanette Demora. Shout out to Jeanette. So we are working together to really develop, some materials and things for this. And I haven't even told you what Quest is. But
that's okay. We need the background.
Yeah.
We need the context for this, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things that it seems instantaneous, and then there's some leaps, and then boom. But and anything that we do and anything that we teach our students to do, sometimes you can't get away from the time factor.
Yes.
You just have to give things time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's rare in our daily lives. Everything's so rushed. You have to have everything immediate. But this is 10 years in the making, and it's still not done. So, that's one of the big lessons that I've learned from this is to just be patient, put it out there, keep trying, don't let it go. But then also at some point, like today, don't be afraid to just start putting it out there and letting it go, even if you don't think it's perfect.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're doing. That's why I'm here. And that's why I'm so happy to be having this conversation with you today.
Absolutely. And, I think there's several lessons in there too. And on top of those, which is don't be afraid to talk to your colleagues about this. Don't be afraid to talk to your peers about this, because sometimes you just need to bounce stuff off of someone else, and they'll see that one little thing that's not quite, in your head, it's almost there, but not quite. And then they'll be like, oh, well, if you just turn this way, and you're like, oh, of course. Like, why did I see that?
Yeah.
And not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good either, or the good enough.
Yes.
I have a lot of trouble with that too. Like, I always want to bend it, shape it, make it it's got to be perfect before I put it out in the world. And a couple of years ago, I just kind of said, you know what? It goes out and it is what it is. And you can still continue to refine. You can still continue to fix things, tinker. But if it's not getting use, what's the point? Like, what's the purpose of having the ideas?
Exactly. And, I had shared a little video I did with you, and I sent it to you. And it was, just my first kind of, all right, I'm getting this down. I've got it. I want to send it to you. But even then, I told you, I'm like, yeah, but it's changed. I've got to do it again. So spending time doing this video, which you'll be able to share, everyone will get to see this little video I sent out. I did like so many takes because it was so hard to put it all together and get it right. And, it really is deceptively difficult. But I did it, and I'm like, all right, I have like 5 good ones I can choose from. And I sent it to you, and I shared it with Jeanette. And I later that evening, I show it to my husband, and he's like, it's great, but I think you should do this. And I said, it's already done. Don't give me I was not asking for suggestions.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, I'm so envious of the people who can do video so smoothly and get it. Like, I spend so much time on videos, and like, I'm going to trim out 1/10 of a second here, and I'm going to add like 1/3 of a second there. And it's like, why am I? It's just, nobody's going to notice it. I'm the only one that's going to notice that. So,
well, apparently my husband will notice it, and he'll tell you. So you just let me know.
So he's not going to be my audience. Got it.
No.
Okay. So I love this, that you've got, you've been developing this, and now you're ready to release it out in the world. Yeah. And so have you been, well, let's talk about what it is, and then we can go further with that. So talk about Quest. What is Quest?
Okay. So Quest is so many different things. It really, at its core, and I know we talked about this the last time we talked, learning about learning. And so it's a model, a framework to understand learning and harness it. So it's understanding the things that you should be doing, but it's also a vehicle for instruction. And it can be expanded, contracted, adapted, parts done however you need for your purpose or your audience. So it's this beautiful little framework that can be easy to understand, and you can scale it down for our youngest learners. But it's also simple enough and comprehensive enough that you talk to an adult, you say, listen, this is what you're supposed to be doing when you're searching for information. You're not sure what the algorithm is delivering, where is this AI coming from? All of these things, you don't know what to do for yourself, these information literacy skills that everybody can struggle with at times. Here, you can do this. So it provides that that kind of view of everything that goes into being an independent lifelong learner.
Love that. And, I think we've started to see, I think, more, especially in the school library, but generally in education, that the folks at the higher grade levels are starting to recognize that, like, I can use picture books with my older students, and there's ways that we can go further with them than they could go when they were younger. And this sort of feels like along those same lines. Like, you're starting with something that is relatively basic that can be taught to a younger grade, but then as you get older, we can add in nuance, we can add in detail, we can kind of dig deeper.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so just to get started with it, when we think of the word quest, QUEST, we start with Q, and that is questions. And questions are key to the whole process. So it's not just at the beginning, but it really is an opportunity to remember that questions help get us started on a path to discovery. It's not, I know this and I'm looking for something to reinforce what I already know.
Right.
And I'm not looking for something to just provide an answer. I'm going to ask questions, kind of set it up and carry me through. And I'm going to remember that I need to ask questions throughout all those steps. And then the U is for utilize tools and resources, appropriate tools and resources, or use tools and resources. And that kind of steers where you're starting to go, because not every task, not every search should start with one resource over and over and over again. You should be thoughtful about, well, is my resource, my doctor? Is my resource a website? Different purposes, different needs. So we want to make sure we're utilizing appropriate tools and resources for the task at hand, which we've set up by asking questions about. So we start getting this trajectory. Then the next part is E for explore those resources, and S for synthesize or make sense of what you're finding. And so that is the part where you can start collecting and organizing the information that you're finding. And so for the little kids, maybe you're doing a KWL chart. You're creating mechanisms for learning how to take notes, extrapolate information. You're gathering, you're collecting, and maybe you have to go back because something still doesn't make sense or it's not lining up. So you go back and you get more, and that's okay. It should be a cyclical thing. We should be asking, do I have enough? Is this enough? What about this? Ask those questions to then determine, when do I have enough?
Kind of spiraling back through that, questioning again, and like, okay, I've got some information, but yeah.
To keep pushing it forward, because you don't want to just stay still.
Right.
And then the last part, T, you have a couple of options. You really do, because you can tell others what you found, kind of transmit, hey, all right, I found this, and you send it out. But not everything needs to be sent out immediately. You don't need to share immediately. And this goes back to what I said before. Sometimes you just need some time. So maybe you transport that information in your mind. You just kind of bring it along with you and you let it be there, because you need to be thoughtful about how and when you share information. Just because it came at you from a screen and it went in your head doesn't mean that you need to just immediately spit it out.
Oh, yes.
So there's some flexibility. And again, this model is meant to, expand, contract, and kind of go with what you need. So that at the end, you're thinking, well, what do I need to do? Am I sharing this, telling others about it responsibly? Or is the more responsible thing to do just to sit and think and carry it with me until I'm ready to use it? We want students especially to have a sense of control and autonomy over their lives and what they're learning and how they're using it. And if we teach them, it is your responsibility to use this. I think 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to get kids buying into that. They want control. They want to feel like they have, some responsibility and that they can be trusted, and they can. If you give it to them, I really think they can. So you have all of that together. And the video, you'll see, there's other parts to this whole model, but at the essence of Quest, that's really it.
That's amazing. Huh. Wow. I love especially that you are building in the idea of just pausing and reflecting and considering. it kind of reminds me of the marshmallow experiment that they often do with young children, that here's marshmallows right in front of you, and if you can wait, you'll get more later. It's sort of like that with information, because as you rightly point out, so often we get information and we spit it back out in the world, and we don't necessarily pause and reflect, should this be shared? How do I want to share this? With whom should I share it? It's just retweet, resend, re-email. And it's really damaging to our information environment to just be continually recycling and spitting this stuff out.
Yeah.
So to build that in as part of the process, I absolutely love that. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really believe that the more you think about these steps and the more you work to implement them, the better you're going to get at it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to think of information literacy as being this continual, high-minded thing that you can't attain. Everybody can learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this vehicle for learning. I've seen expert librarians teach little children the foundational information literacy skills. And I've seen adults really wrestle with, well, what am I supposed to do? So let's whatever we can do to make sure we're providing that instruction, that model. And, I think it's just so important.
Absolutely, man. Well, and I'm going to, in talking through Quest and kind
Mhm.
of laying out the pieces, I had seen the video you shared previously, your kind of first draft video, and it had gotten some of my wheels turning. And the idea of how important questions are before we begin research really
Mhm.
kind of landed with me. And I'm going to throw out there my analogy, which is
Right.
not nearly as good, but inspired by your Q and your U, I started thinking about how research is kind of like making pancakes. And this is the analogy I was thinking I would try and use with the students, because
Yeah.
before you can even make pancakes, you have to ask yourself some questions. Do I have
Mhm.
the ingredients? Do I have the materials I need? Do I even want pancakes? And so often when we drive them to research, they might have a topic and they just start looking up whatever they can find about that topic without pausing to think, like, what do I need to know? What am I trying to accomplish with this? And utilizing appropriate resources, that one stuck with me as, okay, if I've determined that I do have my ingredients, what kind of resources in my kitchen do I want to use to make these pancakes? Because I've got a blender. Is that going to help me make pancakes? I don't know. I love making smoothies, so that's usually my first stop, but maybe it shouldn't be for this one, So I haven't gotten any further than that, but I love that even just having the conversation about what these elements sort of represent has
Mhm.
already got me thinking about different ways to talk about this with my students, because it's so vitally important. And it's really, again, you're kind of expanding my mind and making me rethink things. And it's so valuable for both
Yeah.
me and my students. So I really appreciate you bringing this.
Oh, that's
But
fantastic.
I have gone off on a tangent, and I apologize. We're
No,
going to bring it back around.
no, that's okay.
So,
I am not the center of the universe. I mean, don't tell that to my kids, but no, and that's exactly why I really was ready to talk about this and bring it forward, because there are people out there just like you who are going to say, "Oh, you know what? I can take this and I can make this here." And I don't own learning. I don't own like the scientific process here. Um, let's share, let's talk about it, and just get it out there, because you don't know what's going to inspire somebody else. And I will say, when it comes to questions, I've been working to really inject questions as much as possible in my work with students, and so much so that at the beginning of the year, I had signs printed out, giant signs, and they're up in my library, and they are the key question words that we want to use: the who, what, where, when, how. And, I point out when I'm talking to students, about citations and bibliographies. Well, what are we asking? We're asking who made it? Where is it coming from? What is it? When was it made? Um, you're tying some of these things together, and I really have been working to push questions, because if you're not asking questions, you're not doing any of the other stuff.
mm-hmm.
And then at the end, and even in the model that I created with T, where you're considering, telling others or just transporting it for a little while, you've got that end question for why. Why should I share it? Why is this important? Why should I hold on to it? Why should I care? You can't really answer why if you haven't answered all those other questions first. So when I think about this and when I talk with students, okay, why? Hold back before we even think about why. Let's go back. All right, who am I? Who are you? What is it that we're doing? Where are we? What is this for? When are we doing it? When does it have to be due? Talking about projects, when does it have to be due? And then at the end, can push students, and this is kind of the influence of the information search process that came from Dr. Kuthau, is that reflection. Okay, the why. And you've got to really bring that in. And so the quest model carries those questions all the way through the end. And then that end part is so critical in working with students, is getting them to reflect on the things that happen throughout the way. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So have you started using this with students?
So I showcased it last year to some students. Okay. I was able to find time with a trusted colleague. And I've been working, like I said, pushing those questions forward. It's so difficult to find time. And working relationships with your colleagues takes time to build trust and rapport. And so I've been working and I've implemented steps of this with some teachers in small bits. And but I also, like I said, my collaborator Jeanette, she's been working at this too and developing some fantastic materials to work on this with some of her students. And so she's been piloting it. And we're really seeing yes, this makes sense. Yes, we can use it. Let's do more. Let's do more. Let's build more, and build more infrastructure around it to help.
Love it. And you're saying that you're seeing some positive results from this. And I'm just kind of curious, what kind of either feedback or what kind of things have you noticed that have been changing with the students in how they're kind of engaging with information through this?
So I think it's a different approach. They're so often in situations where they're told, go here, do this, do this platform and complete these sentences. And here's this assessment. And for someone to stop and get them to just sit with something for a little bit and walk them through it, or get them to understand this process, there is definitely still that struggle of wanting to jump to something they already know or an immediate answer. So some of them might get it and really kind of practice it and try, and some of them are still need a little bit more nudge and direction. I will say that over the past few years, any teacher, administrator I've talked about this with, they love it. Everybody likes it. Everyone's like, great. How do we implement it? And so finding that instructional time, finding that collaboration time, making sure you have that trust, it's difficult, but
absolutely,
it's worth it. You just got to keep plugging away.
Yeah. Well, and time is, really it all comes down to time. All of it in education comes down to time. And there's not enough hours in the day to do all the things that we want to do. And I've been recently reflecting independently of our conversation here about how difficult it is to find the time to do the things that we know are important, because there are so many other factors being pushed into our educational space. We've got to do this kind of particular assessment. We've got to have this kind of accountability. We've got to do this kind of paperwork. And every little bit of it kind of eats away at that ability of students to have the time. And that is probably the single most valuable element that students can get, is just having time to think without distraction, without requirement, just soaking in information. And the element that you bring in, time in general is important. And I love that you were bringing in at the end this idea of sometimes you just need time to sit with information. And it's such a rarity in our spaces these days, just across the board, whether it's a classroom, whether it's a library, whatever it is. So I love that you are really bringing that to the forefront. And it's something that we really need to grapple with. I think systemically, we need to give some consideration to how do we just get more time and worry less about filling every second of the day and just having that freedom to breathe a little bit, because that breathing part is so important to learning and knowledge.
Yeah.
And yet we still seem to neglect that real fundamental element of what goes on in education, just having the moment to say, okay, what does this mean to me?
Yeah.
And reflect and consider. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry,
another
tangent, but
no, but you're bringing up some really good points, and it's not everything can be assessed on a standardized test or, some interactive practice model on a
Yep.
computer.
Yep.
Not everything, but these foundational learning skills, critical thinking skills support those things. And, there's definitely been, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, documentation about how staffed school libraries and fully funded school libraries support student achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many factors that schools are dealing with. It's difficult to say, well, where do we, give resources here, take away resources here? Where is this going to fit in? You know, any little moment that you can try to sneak something in or give it a try or say, you know what? Yes, this is an immediate need. This is something valuable. We need to do it now. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's going to take me 5 years of working with a teacher and getting trust from an administrator to carve
Mm-hmm.
out time to
Yeah.
implement this. But I'll keep trying. I'll keep doing it. And along the way, you do what you can when you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you can. That's all you can ask for, and all you can try to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I'm looking at this as a framework and just it's really striking me how malleable this is. I mean, it'll work with any kind of ability level, any kind of grade level, any kind of, I mean, even within it, I would imagine, I usually like start to dig into differentiation in ELL. I can see this absolutely being something like, even with an ELL group, some of your questions might be, what do I understand? What do I not understand in this assignment? And then like utilizing appropriate resources. What are some resources I might need to help me translate or understand what's going on? So
Yeah.
this is really such a powerful acronym that you've got here.
All right. So do you want to really mind blown?
Yeah.
Recently, it, I've been trying to work with one of my teachers who has ELL students, and we had to sit and really think about, okay, where is the problem? Why are they struggling here? What can we do? And then I went and I thought about the library resources. What resources can I use to help deliver what these students need? And I applied my own model to start helping this particular set of students. So even in this world of where we feel so many restrictions, we just sat down and we said, okay, let's just figure this out and start trying things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just for teaching to other people. It's for us to apply to ourselves, right? We don't necessarily consciously do all of the steps as
Mm-hmm.
trained information professionals, but we should be really thinking about it and using it and realizing, oh, I am going through all these steps, and checking ourselves with it. And it truly is meant to expand and contract as needed, as you work with it and as you have a certain task. Absolutely. So all of those things, you're right on the money with it. I'm so glad that you're seeing this.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about that idea of taking a step back from our own processes and looking at how we are approaching them. And it's so, I hate to say how long veteran teacher, but as someone who's been in the classroom for quite a while now, there's so many things I do without really thinking about why I do them or how I do them. And I've told students for 30 years, like, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And I've gotten so used to telling students that I often assume that I have told the students that, whether or not I actually have. And it's just, it's all become so automatic that I'm not taking that step back and kind of saying, let's actually examine what I'm doing and break down this process and think about why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. And this is a wonderful reminder that we do need to take that time. And the things that we have built, we've spent years building up these skills and building up this knowledge. And sometimes I find myself feeling frustrated that why am I the only person that seems to know this? Well, because I'm the one who put in the time and the effort to learn these things. And now it seems second nature to me. Now it seems like this is just common knowledge, because if I know it, everybody must know it. But in reality, you gotta kind of step back a little bit and say, okay, slow your roll there, playa, and let's figure out what's actually, common knowledge and what I have built up
Right.
over time. So
yeah, and it's just, as a teacher, even as an educator, I can forget what the students don't know. If you're not in education, you think, well, this is so simple, they should be able to do it. And it's not provided explicitly.
yes.
Even with my own teens, I they don't know how to use certain functions of Gmail, or this or that. And I, seeing how certain things have just been pushed on them but the underpinnings of exactly what to do that I've figured out over time, they don't necessarily get all the time from everybody. And so understanding, number one, that yes, you as an adult know how to do these things, but you need to break it down and explicitly tell them, right, these steps, because they haven't done it.
Yeah.
And then with this model, one of the things I will say, I mean, take it, adapt it, expand, contract, but I think it is critical that we tell students, we tell people the whole process.
Yes.
And tell them there is a journey. There are steps. It's not some phantom scary thing. And give them a foundation of support so that when they're going through things that they're unfamiliar with, that you already know, you're mindful of all the anxiety, uncertainty, insecurity they might be wrestling with. And so explicitly, there's no big secret. We don't have to hide things. We don't have to gatekeep it. Tell them about it. Tell them about the whole process. And listen, you're going to go through all of this, but we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
I think is just super, super important.
Absolutely. Well, and sort of related, one more tangent, and then I promise I'll stop with tangents. But I was having I had a rush of students come in to use our print station in the library. And like every once in a while I'll get some, but one of the teachers had assigned, you have to print out a thing to bring to class. And none of the kids did it at home. And so there was this huge rush for the printer. And I've got instructions on the station so that students can follow along and do it themselves. But they were still having some issues, and it took forever because there's only one printer and they have to all kind of funnel through it. And so at some point, one of the kids was there working on the computer, and the teacher who had assigned this walked by, and she was like, "Oh, are you printing your thing for the assignment?" The kid said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, well, you know how to print, right?" And he said, "No." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Don't worry, he's got the instructions there, so he's going to be able to do this." But this teacher and I had a little side conversation, and she was like, "I don't understand. Why are so many of them having difficulty printing?" And I said, "They don't print. Like in the modern world, how often do you yourself print other than when you're in school making photocopies of things? How often do you print? Almost never. Everything's digital now." And so those kids, it seems like a foundational skill to us. They're grown up in a world without printing. So for them, this is a new task. And so it's another one of those things that kind of blindsides you, that if you're not taking that step back and saying, do my students actually understand this thing that I assume is common knowledge, you might be shooting yourself in the foot and setting yourself up for failure. Because this teacher was so frustrated that half the class showed up without this printout. And I was like, yeah, but you got to make sure that you give them instruction and time to do this. And it was literally on Tuesday assigned and expected on Wednesday. And I was like, oh, there's your first mistake. Like even in the perfect situation, kids aren't going to print overnight. So, it ties right into this idea of we're just sometimes so blind to the things we expect, we don't think about what the actual situation on the ground is.
And we're also not helping them necessarily tie everything in together meaningfully. I had fantastic education, and I was being taught all the things I was supposed to be taught. But it really wasn't until years later when I saw like, oh, this is why, and this is how, and this is really what it meant. No one explicitly delivered some of these pieces to me. It wasn't until later that I connected them. Now, yes, there should be some grit. There should be some work involved in learning. But when I realized that if I had been told explicitly, very clearly, like without any sort of like nuance or just subtlety, or that just like if I had been told directly, it would have made a difference for me in understanding my own intelligence and what I could do. So when we go and work with students and you really say, listen, we're going to be very clear, very explicit. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, and then we're going to do it. And you guide them through it. I think it makes a difference. And even if there are students who are like, yeah, I got this, and they're fine, you're going to have students who don't speak up and are just kind of like, everyone else knows what they're doing except me, so I'm not going to say anything. And then you have the students who really do need that kind of explicit instruction. But when you do it, you're benefiting everybody.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's not just students that do that too. I think there's lots of educators who say, oh, it seems like everybody else knows what's going on, so I'm just going to try and figure it out as we go, and hopefully I don't mess up. And that's one of the things I love about how you said you realized you were using your Quest system to sort of help you think through what you were doing with your ELL students, because I think too often we do get trapped in this situation of we're afraid to ask questions. We're afraid to look like we might be ignorant about something. And that's something so vital that we model that for our students so that they can say, oh, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not understand something. And I think it's valuable for us to also model it for our colleagues, because sometimes we're in that same boat as the students. So,
and I think we are, like, all of us are living through this right now with the advent of AI, right? There's a lot of panic. There's a lot of concern. There's also a lot of just rampant use. And then there's, the other extreme of shut it down. We're not engaging with it. And I think there's a sense of, well, I should be using this, so I've got to start using it. Or it's a nothing approach, which in some cases might be right. Sit back, give it some time. You don't have to jump in right away for everything. But there's that level of anxiety that comes along with it, a lot of questioning. And, if whatever program or implementation or directive is coming through a school district, remembering that we also need to help teachers through this process, because they're gonna balk, they're gonna feel, insecure, they're gonna feel like, well, I don't know how to do this. And some are just gonna move forward and just kind of like, I'll figure it out. But we're going through the same we're adults. We're going through the same feelings and emotions that our students are. So all levels, all steps, be mindful, us, our colleagues, our admin, and what everyone's trying to do, have those moments, break it down, say, okay, let's explicitly lay it out and know that we're going to get through this together.
Well, and I mean, I'm thinking about AI and Quest, and I'm saying this so absolutely applies to looking at whether we should be using AI, how we should be using AI, what students should or shouldn't, what teachers should or shouldn't, in what particular scenarios. And that absolutely fits with questioning what this is, where it is, why it is, how it is, and then utilizing when is it appropriate. It's not always, but it might be in certain cases. And then exploring to figure out, what is this resource? How do I take advantage of this? What are the benefits and the drawbacks? I mean, you have absolutely given us a thought process here that can apply in so many ways. So this is so great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Once again, blowing my brain wide open. This is great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it took, a couple of light bulb moments and 10 years. No, it really, it's hard to come up with something simple, but that encompasses everything that it needs to. And thank you. I've worked hard on this for a long time, and I've had help along the way. So thank you for saying how much you're seeing yourself in it and how you could use it. And I really appreciate all that feedback.
Absolutely. I'm already figuring out, I've got a lesson coming up with some of my history students. I'm figuring this is going to be one of our bedrock pieces here. So this is great. I love this.
Great.
Whew. All right. Well, you and I could talk all day. I have no doubt.
I know.
But
I have
we are going to
laundry
take
to do.
Before we get to laundry, we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Squiddy.
Okay.
So what are you going to bring us? Something we should have on our reading radar, something to add to our TBR list. What are you bringing?
I read this fantastic YA novel not that long ago, Night Country, by Melissa Albert, and really just loved it. It was a fantastic book. The other thing I've been reading a lot are my crochet instructions. I've been doing a lot of self-soothing. I've been doing a lot of crocheting. So I've been reading a lot of that. And I think that, having that mix of professional life, but also that downtime is part of me and helps me to kind of let things kind of settle and germinate. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Just out of curiosity, do you ever do any kind of crochet stuff with students or in school, or is it purely just
No. I mean, I'm happy to support clubs and groups and kids who do. In the school where I am now, they have some really great groups and teachers who do a lot of creative stuff. It's just purely for me.
That's great.
I have been trying something new, which is a little anxiety ridden. I'm trying to make a cardigan, a sweater. Never done that before. My first attempt was not good, so I'm trying it again.
That's all right. That's okay. We learn by doing, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So folks are going to want to catch up with you because I know they're going to want to see all the awesomeness that's going on. So where are they going to go find you if they want to look for you?
Yeah, so I am on Blue Sky. I am the Mary Librarian at bmeredith.bluesky.social. My website is currently in transition. So I am going to make sure that you have that for our show notes. So by the time this goes to air, I'll have it there for people. I am also on LinkedIn, but Blue Sky is really the place to come find me and give me a follow and engage with everyone there.
Absolutely. Man, I love Blue Sky. It has grown so much in the past couple of years. It's so great to have that school librarian community just burgeoning there. So if you're out there, folks, go check it out.
Yeah, well, I think that's where you and I connected.
Yes. Absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you again so much for once again blowing our mind wide open and just sharing this great foundational piece of thinking and helping me kind of reconsider how am I thinking about just information and search in general. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.